That was the first time in my life I felt like I belonged somewhere because I had been through all that other stuff. And I never really felt like I was a part of anything. I was just moving around.
So I'm Asia. Um, I grew up in a single parent home. It was myself, my mother, and my brother, my younger brother. My mother was divorced from my father when I turned about 1 years old. I am multiracial. My father is white, well, what you would consider white, because my grandmother is Mexican and my grandfather is Dutch. Yes, yes. So, and then my mom's black. So you have a black woman and a white man getting married in the 70s. And so they, were in a place where they were trying to come against all odds. During that time, that was very frowned upon. Not only did she already grow up, in a world of, being segregated, now she's coming into a marriage, where she's trying to be accepted, not, with them within themselves, but from family members. So for them, coming together, posed a problem. My grandmother, rest her soul, she did not like my mom because she was black. So they end up getting a divorce. Um, she got remarried, and this guy was very abusive. He smoked cigarettes, but he was an alcoholic. And he did a lot of cussing, hoop hollering. He would get drunk, and essentially, him getting drunk, that led to the abuse of him beating on my mom. Me and my brother were subject to, the fighting, the cussing, all of that stuff, and, trying to basically, we would come and be kind of like holding on to her, trying to hug her so he wouldn't hit her. They still stayed together. We end up moving here into Savannah. And that was when I physically started fighting this man. Again, I'm only like 9, 10 years old, and I think something in me just felt like I needed to protect my mom. And so it would be moments where, they would get into it, and I never forget, he was trying to barricade the door so I could not get in. And you talking about, I mean, I'm short already at my age, but I'm like, I literally somehow I got the strength to push the door over and knock this big man down on the floor, so that I could protect my mom because he was in there like beating on her. And so, that was a way for me to kind of like get her out of that situation. And, it didn't stop there. Of course, it kept going. My mom had not yet come into a place where, she wanted to divorce him. I'll never forget the day I was sitting in the car waiting. I had to been about 12 then. I was sitting in the car waiting for her to come outside. I'm like, what are they doing? It's time for us to go to school. What's going on? And they were in the house fighting, and I didn't know. So she's bringing him out like on the porch, to see what's happening because she's needing help. And so I'm having to get out of the car, and now I'm being put in a position where I'm having to defend my mom against my brother. And so it kind of started there, where I mean, he wanted what he wanted. If it didn't comply to him, he was going to fight her on it. And so from there, I I feel like, you know, to me, it's a situation, of course, now that I'm older, I don't blame her, but it still hurt, having to be in a home where my mom is pretty much, I'm having to defend her, but then she's defending my brother too at the same time. So the stuff he gets away with, I'm not getting away. It just escalated from there. We went from this to now my brother's older. He started pulling out knives then, and it just got worse. So I went from fighting a grown man to now having to fight my brother, um, you know, for my mom. And so I spent majority of my childhood defending my mother. I couldn't, I felt like I could never do enough for her. Like I was a student, you know, I'm not out here cutting up, doing crazy stuff. My brother getting caught smoking cigarettes, all of that stuff is going on. She giving him money for making C's in school. I never got any of that. It was like all of that was happening on top of him beating on her, me having to fight him. I'm literally having to physically fight my brother, like beat him down to defend my mother. And then now it goes from that to him pulling out knives and him threatening her. High school came around and he's still doing it. So I got in trouble one day for barricading my door, my room door, because, for me, I feel like I could physically fight this dude, if I'm awake. But what if I go to sleep, and he tries to come at me? So I started barricading my door at night because I didn't trust my brother. I mean, I just did it, and so I was like, if you feel like that's okay, I don't. So I felt like I needed to protect myself in that regard. So I remember getting in trouble for that, and I'm thinking, now I can't sleep at night because this man crazy and I don't know what he gonna do, And so one day, I heard it. They were getting into it again. Heard him open the drawer to the kitchen to get a knife, and I just remember coming around the corner. But before I could get there, I just saw my mom standing like this, and she fell to the floor because he had, I guess, I don't know if she tried to grab the knife from him or what, but he had literally cut through her hand. And I'm just like, all I see is blood. So at that point, I'm doing the first thing I know to do, which is to get her out of the situation. Now, my mom is a lot heavier than I am, but I literally picked my mom up, dragged her out of the house, and I'm beating on a neighbor's door, to call 911 at that point, because my brother is like, this man is crazy, course, they took him, tried to put him in jail. She still defended him, after that. Um, in that, honestly and truthfully for myself, it made me feel like I wasn't really worth anything. Because here it is, I'm having to defend my mom in this, but then she made him be like this best person when he really wasn't. I lost my virginity at 14, because I started seeking for that attention, before that. Because I mean, I wasn't getting it at home. My dad was in California. So, I'm dealing with those things at home. And then when I go to school, I'm being rejected in school too, because of my fair skin. I was not accepted with white people because I was Black. And I was not even accepted with the Black people because I was fair skinned. And it's like I'm literally dealing with rejection everywhere. As I became a teenager, I just started, I'm like, well, I might as well. I mean, my mom's doing this with my brother. I mean, I might as well do what I want to do at this point. Like, what am I over here why am I trying to save myself? If nobody wants the save girl, nobody wants the nice girl, you know, and that's how it made me feel. And so I lost my virginity at 14. Of course, that relationship didn't work out. That was the summer of my 11th grade year. Left West Virginia, came back to Savannah, and I am pregnant. Now I have to think about how am I going to live my life with this baby coming? Because I've already been in a situation where I've had to fight literally all my life. and I don't want my daughter in that. So, me and her father, um, natural situation. Unfortunately, he lives there. I live here. We're no longer together now, so I move on. And I move on into another relationship. And so now, I have my daughter at 18. I'm in a new relationship. I'm sick of the arguing and the fighting, and I decide to leave home and go move in with my boyfriend. Well, I left, went to Jacksonville, and this is my second daughter's father, by the way. Left, went to Jacksonville, stayed there for about 2 years. But within those 2 years, my oldest daughter now, who is about 9 months, 10 months old, not quite a year yet, she has been shaken. Um, so the thing that I thought I was protecting her from still happened. She ended up being abused. Um, she was shaken. They call it shaken baby syndrome. It's literally, for those who don't understand, it is literally when someone shakes a baby vigorously. And when they're young like that, it causes hemorrhaging on the brain. It's like having an extraneous whiplash, like from a car accident. But for a baby, because they're not fully developed, it causes injury to the brain. And so, what I thought I was preventing in my house with my mom and my brother, I still ended up I felt like bringing upon her when I left home and I moved in with the boyfriend. Um, at that time when it happened, of course, I'm the accused. He is as well, and I'm like, man, I've been taking my baby to the doctor all this time. What are you talking about? I've been taking her to the emergency room. I've been getting her checked out. Like, I'm asking you what's wrong with her. And so, I'm doing all of this, going, trying to figure it out myself because it was like, you don't necessarily know that's what's happening because it's a brain injury. It's not apparent, now, no, now that I know that, and I've had some med school, I understand when there's an injury to the brain, the rest of your body goes haywire. She was having symptoms like vomiting, constipation, seemed like she would have a cold or something, but that's not really what was going on with her. What was going on with her was that she had been shaken, and, it wasn't discovered until, I finally, refused to take her home one day. I was like I know it was God because uh, the nurse came in the room that day and she said, "Have these people told you what's wrong with your baby?" And I was like, "No." She said, I can't even remember this lady's face. She said, "Do not let them take her, send you back home. Don't let them send you back home. You tell them you're not leaving here till they find out what's wrong with her." So I did that. I know it was the Holy Spirit. I literally said that to the doctor because they was getting ready to send her home again because they couldn't figure out what was wrong with her. And I said, "I'm not taking her home until you figure out what's wrong with her." And so from that day, probably was the next night, she had a seizure. And when she had that seizure, it's when they said, "Wait, something else is going on with her." That was when they figured out, okay, we need to do a CT scan. And when they did the CT scan, is how they discovered that she had been shaken. And then for her, she wasn't just shaken. She had to have also been like slammed into a hard surface or something because her skull had been cracked. And at that age, it's hard to crack their skull because it's not fully developed. It's actually soft still. And so they could tell that it had happened more than once because they could see the old injury and then they could see the new injury. They could tell the difference of the bruising from the first to the last. And so, in that moment, I just felt like, oh my God, like, what am I doing? I'm a horrible mother. I thought I was protecting my daughter, and so of course now I have to fight the system. I have to prove I didn't do it, you know. I had to prove that I didn't do it. Parent, that's literally what was told to me by the foster parent at the time, that I was a horrible parent, that I should not have let that happen to her as if I was standing there when it happened. And I'm having to prove to these people that I love my daughter and that I want her and I want to take care of her. They were literally saying that to me. She's not going to survive. Your daughter is probably going to die. When it looked like she was going to survive, they were like, she'll never be the same again. She's blind. She can't see. They were telling me all these things, and all I could do was just pray to God in those moments and be like, God, please help me. I remember lying on the floor in my mom's bathroom, and I was just bawling, crying. I just was like, God, I said, I don't want to be here anymore. That was probably the first time in my life I felt like I just wanted to die. And I was asking him to just take me instead. Like, it's not her fault. Take me instead. I don't want to be here. I did this to her. Like, just take me. I can't survive. I can't live like this. And probably right after that, I found out I was pregnant. And it made me feel so crazy because I was like, how in the world am I pregnant? And this is happening. Not only am I pregnant, but I'm pregnant by this man who hurt my daughter. And so now I'm thinking, how is this going to be a situation? Like the first time ever in my life, I even thought, am I even supposed to have this baby? Because this man literally almost killed my child. And I'll never forget, we were riding down the street here in Savannah, and it was a church. Um, and it was crosses all in the yard, like everywhere, like little white crosses just out in the yard. And then there was a big old banner, and it said, "Abortion kills." And I'm just in the back of the car in the window. Imagine me sitting in the back seat of a car looking out the window like this and riding by this church. And I went, oh my God. Because you contemplate stuff sometimes and you just don't say it out loud. And it was like, okay, no, nope, can't do it. Nope, nope. I thought I was, nope, just whatever. I'm just gonna have to work it out. It's gonna happen. And that day, though, it made me see life again. Because up until that point, I just felt like it was death. Nothing but death was happening around me. And I didn't want to live myself. I'm sitting here literally waiting for these people to tell me my daughter done crashed out, because of all the seizures that she was having and the medication that they're putting her on, trying to prevent her from dying. All of this stuff was happening. And it's like in that moment, God was showing me, for somebody else, it's like, what? But for me, it was like, no, there's life still there. There's still life. And I'm carrying it, and I have to get out of this. Like, I have to be strong. And, that's something I, even share with my daughter. It's my second daughter, Destiny, that I believe God audibly gave me her name, Destiny. I didn't know what I was going to name her. And I remember God speaking her name to me, but I know God gave me that name to give her because God was essentially saying that you still have a destiny. Like, this life is not over for you, nor is it for your daughter, because my daughter's still living. She's 27 years old. She has two kids of her own, and I believe that's what God was speaking to me then. So I, developed stability back here at home. For her, that was a fight. Why was it a fight? Because of the history of my mother and my brother. They almost did not give me my daughter back because I was trying to come back home and stay here with my mom. And then all they have to do is pull up that record that says, hey, you guys had this going on before. I don't think that's a good fit for her. You can't take her back there, you know? And so I had to call my dad, who at the time had lost his memory, literally, because he was depressed, and had been doing electroshock therapy, which is illegal now, thanks to my father. He had been taking electroshock therapy. That was something they literally did to help people with depression. The purpose of it, for those who don't know, the purpose of it is to shock the brain to forget why you're depressed in the first place. Well, when you do that, guess what else happens? You lose part of your memory. In his case, he lost a lot of years of memory. So I was going through that. I'm calling my dad, who has no idea who I am when I call him. And his parents are having to say, this is your daughter. And his wife at the time is having to say, this is your daughter, this is what's going on with her. It's a story that I really don't never ever tell because, to be honest, it was kind of like a fluke. I was dating this guy. We did get married. We was probably married about 6 months. But he was in the military. He married me for a check. I'm thinking we're like gonna have a relationship and have a marriage. He did it for what he said. He was like, man, because that's how he approached me with it. We're together, we love each other. Let's get married because we'll get more income. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, well, yeah, let's do it. I'm thinking I'm about to jump into something. I was able to get a divorce from him because I mean, we're together. It was like, okay, let's move on. So, but in the midst of that, I met um, my next children's father. Probably after a year or so, um, I got pregnant, and of course, now I'm trying to make it work because this is, for me, baby daddy number 3. This is for those who say they don't know, but you do. You do. He started already showing signs of abuse. It started with the name calling. Um, that was first. And then I remember us getting into an argument one day and we was riding down the street. So, for me, I'm still the same feisty person I've been all my life. I'm gonna fight anyway, I've been fighting all my life. Who's gonna stop now? And so I remember riding down the street and we was getting into it. We was arguing. He called me out my name. He called me a B. And I pulled over in the parking lot and said, get out my car. And so he was like, I'm not getting out of the car. I'm like, yes, you are. Whoop. What are you talking about? Oh, I'm not accepting that. Get out my car. So he wouldn't get out. So I got out with my keys, got out of the car. And I remember him about chasing me around the car for my keys. And no, he took the keys. I'm sorry. He took the keys. So he's chasing me around and I'm going back around the other car trying to get my keys from him so I could leave. Cause he like, well, if I can't go, you can't go. And so I finally, somehow I end up snatching the keys from him. When I got those keys out of his hands, that was the very first day he put his hands on me. He literally balled his fist up and punched me in my face. And I remember standing there shocked, like, what in the world just happened? And he walks off and he walks down the street. We was close enough that he could walk to his parents' house. And for the life of me, I don't know why I made an excuse to stay with him, but I did. And that started the cycle of being in an abusive marriage that I witnessed my mom being in. And now I find myself in a relationship like that. And so um, I made an excuse. I stayed with him. We had a child. It was our first child. At that point, honestly, I kept thinking it would get better. Um, I still view myself not like my mom because at least I fight back. Is what I talk myself into. Because I'm not gonna stand there and just let you hit me, you know. And then um we had the first baby, which he about sideways tried to deny that it was even his. Um, and so had to go through that with him. Talking with his parents about it. You know, they never agreed with anything that he did, but unfortunately, with him too, he got in trouble, they bail him out. He get in trouble again, they bail him out. He go to jail, they gonna bail him out. You know, so he didn't really, you know, from my perspective, I feel like he didn't really have anybody to just be like, no, you can't, you know, and it's gonna be a pattern where he's gonna stop, but he's still being pacified, you know. And so for me, I didn't want to, and he was very verbally abusive in a way of making me feel um unworthy, because that's what he would say things to me like, you just got step, what did he call them, staircases, like staircases as kids, because you went from one man to another and another. So it made me feel really bad, you know, as a person, that I have now 3 different baby daddies, and so he's the one now I'm going to try to work it out with, you know, because I don't want to keep going from man to man to man. You know, that was my perspective and why I ended up making a lot of the excuses. And so you're talking about after we have baby number 2, um, then we're getting married now. Now I'm marrying this person. And, you know, for me, I was like, either we're going to get married or we're not. You know, I kind of did the shotgun thing with him. It's over. Like, if you, because not only was he being abusive, he was cheating on me too. So, I had, unfortunately, during those times, I had people saying to me, so crazy. I literally had women telling me, and this is women even in his family saying to me, well, you know, if long as you're the main one, it'll be okay. You know, you'll be fine. Just make sure you're the main person. Like, every man cheats. Every man cheats. Long as you're like the number one child, that's nothing. That's nothing. But what y'all need to do is stop all that fighting over there. Okay. All right. Okay, fine. We'll try. It was like that kind of stuff. It's like, man, like, so I'm literally being told this is life. And this is something that you need to accept for yourself. You guys have kids now. You got to make it work. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm literally being told. And so for me, I'm like, I've already watched my mom go through what she went through, with the different, relationships, marriages, abuse. I'm finding myself in the same thing and making an excuse for it. And it just, of course, it got worse. We got married after we were together for about 7 years, I think, before we actually got married. Um, and I tried to make it work for about 7 more years. I did. And we had in between from beginning to the end, it was always fighting. He was always cheating. I literally, my children have a sibling after every one, literally from the first to the last. Um, they have brothers or sisters that were born after them. Um, and so in the midst of that, I remember one day, we had moved into another house, and I will say this too, being in a relationship like that, it's very hard to find support when you're going through abuse. For one, people don't like getting involved. Um, the justice system is not very much help either. I would say it was times where I really did was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be in this situation anymore. And they're like, well, you can't get a peace bond because you're married. What are you talking about? What do you mean I can't get a peace bond? Well, you can't get a restraining order, or you can't, oh, no. The police, call the police, excuse me, I'll call the police and they get there and then now they want to be a mediator. Well, we can ask you to leave for 2 hours and then he can come back. But he just put his hands on me. Do you not understand? I feel unsafe. That's why I'm calling you guys. I need help. That was so like, that's what made me feel like this is gonna be my life. Like, I got family telling me this is how it is. I got the police telling me, well, we really can't help you. You guys are, we can diffuse you for the moment, but essentially you guys will be able to still live together. And it's like, what are you talking about? This is crazy stuff. I never forget that time I end up calling the police. Man, they took 2 hours to get to my house. Two whole hours, and the whole time I'm literally standing outside waiting for the police. I had to call them again and be like, hey, who's coming? Like, this man just hit me. What are y'all doing? And I mean, now he's gone. He done left, you know, for whatever time period. But I'm still standing there waiting on them to come. And that particular day, when that happened, I was just like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And I ended up that next morning, I woke up. This is how and during the fight, I end up spraining my ankle. So the next day, I could not walk. I end up having to go to the emergency room. They had to give me crutches. So now the fighting has went from just fighting to now I'm having to wear the fight. Some stuff you get into these arguments and you get into these fights and you think you're kind of hiding it, but that day I couldn't. I couldn't hide it at that point. And I do remember, his family was very upset about it. They were upset with him about it. And, they was like, this is enough. Like, what are you guys doing over there? Keep your hands off of her. And the crazy part is, I have to say too, because I always say, the signs, is because essentially I was being told that he had previously had been putting his hands on the first, because he had a daughter before we got together. I'm sorry I didn't mention that. He had a daughter before we got together. In that relationship, he was abusive to her too. Of course, they don't tell you that right away, but you find out later. It's honestly and truthfully when I started pulling on God more. I feel like that's where I started developing my relationship with God. Churches, I felt like they were judgmental, all of that stuff, and I didn't feel like they could really help me. And so at that time, I feel like God really did use, that pastor and his wife to minister to me, because I just didn't know how to get out of that relationship. I didn't know how to leave. I just, in my mind, I didn't know what to do, because I had the police not helping me. I had the family telling me, long as it's like this, you're okay. I had all of that going on. So I didn't know what to do. And so I feel like God used that pastor during that time to minister to me about my worth, because I felt worthless. And that was why I felt like I couldn't get out of it. I felt like I was just going to be like that forever. And this is just what life was. And so as I was going to church, I felt like God was speaking to me. I remember one day, because we had got into it again. And man, if you talking about suffering concussion, had to get my lip sewn up because he busted my lip. I have a scar on my back currently from us fighting over money. Is all of that stuff is like crazy, right? But I remember sitting in church that day, and the pastor, he was like kind of prophesying, and he was like, I'm talking to you, the person that's been crying out to God, like he sees you. He started naming literally every place I had been crying to God about. He said he saw you in that bathroom, in that shower when you was crying. I'm talking to you, the one that was sitting in the car crying. God sees you. Like he started, I knew he was talking to me. And I was like, at that moment, I just started crying. He was like, and he looked over, he looked me in my face. So he knew at that moment who he was talking to. And I was just crying. And he just was like, God said, you don't have to cry anymore. Like, you don't have to cry anymore. He's got you, He has you. And at that moment, I just felt like, okay, I can do this. Like, it can happen. I can get out of this situation. So now I'm pregnant with baby number 4. And in that, this time, I was like, God, please, I know I'm not supposed to be here. You're telling me that I'm better than this. I don't know what to do. And I was pregnant. I forgot how many months pregnant I was. And I remember we got into a fight again. And this particular day, I really felt like he was trying to kill me. He straddled me. He pulled me into the room away from the kids, because that's what he does. He pulled me into the room, straddled over me, and put his hands around my neck. And he was just pressing down on my neck to strangle me. And of course, he has more strength than I do. But that particular day, everything in me was like, you have to fight. You can't die. I'm like pregnant. I got kids in the living room. Like I gotta get. So the quickest thing I could think to do was to take my nails and dig in his chest, because I felt like if I could hurt him, he would stop hurting me. And so that's what I did. I just dug my nails into his chest, and I'm looking him dead in his face like he gonna let me go, because I know this is hurting him. I just was digging it, and he did. He ended up letting me go, and he got up and he was mad because he was expecting me to not fight back. And I remember him leaving out of there. He left out of the house, and I called the police again. I'm calling them. And I'm like, please, please help me. I don't want to be here anymore. Please take me somewhere. Take me out of this house. And the lady, oh my gosh, she was getting on my nerves. I'm not gonna lie. The officer was like, ma'am, if you really want to be out of this, you just got to stop seeing. I'm like, ma'am, I'm asking you because up until that point, I had been calling shelters. I've been asking them, can I please come there? They wouldn't take me. And so now I'm like, I need you to take me. I need you to take me so that I can get out of this. I need you guys to take me. Please, now. I want to go now. And so I had to be like very like forceful with them because they didn't believe me. They didn't believe that I wanted to be rescued. They did it. And so after I finally convinced the lady, because it was two officers, I finally convinced the lady because here I am, I'm standing here now looking beat up because we got into a real bad fight, before he tried to choke the fool out of me. They take me to a shelter, and that day I believe was the day that was really the process of me breaking away from him. And I will be honest, it was not easy. It was not because here he's my husband. He's the father of my children. Um, I'm getting ready to have another baby. I need help, financially to take care of them. You know, all of that was happening because I mean, I was working during that time. I was working still in between the hospital and a pediatric office at the time. And so, I'm trying to work, but then I'm getting ready to have another baby. I'm going to be down again, and so I need the help still from him to help me take care of these kids. And so, and that's not to say any love was lost in it either. I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm still craving and wanting to be loved, so it took time for me to break away from him, in that. So it was moments where we would get back together, but he couldn't move in, or I would see him and I'd be like, okay, I'm talking to myself now. Asia, come on now. You gotta let this go. It's over. I'm kind of coaching myself through this because nobody else is. He ended up coming back to the house for a period of time. I did. I let him back for I can't even remember why. I think he just didn't have nowhere to stay. But I remember being on the phone with his mom that day, and we had got into it again. And she said, if y'all don't stop over there, I'm coming to get them kids. God knew when she said that to me, that was a wrap. I took his stuff, I put it in my car, and I dropped it off on his mama front porch because they wouldn't let him back home. That's why he was at my house. I took his stuff and I dropped it off on her front porch. And then I called her and I said, and I respect that lady. I do. I respect her. But I called her and I said, ma'am, before you think you going to come get my kids, I'm giving you yours back.
Like literally.
That's literally what I said to her because I felt like my kids don't deserve that. You're not going to tell them you're going to break up their home because your child is over here acting a daggone fool. That was a wrap for me. After that, I was done. I went through the process of getting a divorce. During that time, I started building a closer relationship with God because I needed Him more than ever, and I didn't want. I know that I had pretty much dragged my kids through hell being with this man. And I didn't want them to feel like how I felt for so long, that there was not no life beyond this. And so I knew that and I understand that having a relationship with God. So in that, after that, that was it. I said, our lifestyle is changing. Um, we are no longer going to live how people say we're supposed to live. If God is God and God is telling us that we are free from bondage, we don't have to live like this. I don't have to live under the thumb of satanic activity, and neither do you guys. That's what I was learning, that there is no bondage to those who are in Christ. I was learning that, you don't have to accept, abuse. You don't have to accept people, who talk down to you. Like, you don't have to accept those things. And so, me learning that now, I'm having to teach that to my children because I know they have experienced it too with me. We had changed our music. I was like, let's figure this out. My kids are my friends at this point. I'm like, let's figure out some new music. I know it's got to be some Christian rap because we're used to listen to rap music, R&B, stuff like that. And I was like, it got to be some better Christian music than just gospel all the time because I'm trying to relate to my children, too. And so I was like, it has to be, we're free in God. It's fun to be, in Christ. It's not, you can't do this and you can't do that, is what people make it seem like, but that's not the truth. That was far from the truth. So essentially, um, one day I was like, hey, let's try, because I had been to skate gospel night before and I was like, this is not cool. It was some years ago. And so I was like, let's try it again. Let's just try it again. I want to try it again, with my kids, because I'm trying to find us fun things to do that's not devil worshiping, because I was used to doing, I'm saying it that way because I was used to doing Halloween parties with my kids and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, we're a new creature in Christ. We can't be doing this stuff anymore. And so, I was like, all right, let's try to do gospel skate night again. Let's just see what happens. And we would go. The kids was having fun. We've met a new people. I didn't realize at the time that they were a church. They were people who were coming and hosting a skate night for a gospel skate night. It was like God knew where I needed to be, and I was just being obedient. We all fell in love. Same thing my husband was saying. It was like just overwhelming love happening here, and it's like, oh my God, I've never met people like this before who just love God and love you. We're supposed to be a part of this church. It was kind of like, man, I really belong here. It's That was the first time in my life I felt like I belonged somewhere because I had been through other all that other stuff. And I never really felt like I was a part of anything. I was just moving around, you know. And so that moment, I was like, this is home for me. It felt like home. And I never really felt like that all my life.